All right, so as you guys know, I'm Katie. We're here with Maya, and we are on day 2 of your graduate essay writing boot camp. So today we're going to be talking about storytelling, organization, writing tips, and we'll have a time for you to do some brainstorm on some ideas. If you haven't already started that, today is the perfect day to start. If you have, this can be another way to keep expanding on those ideas. So of course, today our agenda will be talking about creating a narrative in your essay. So how are you going to tell the story of your life? This is kind of a lot focused for your personal statement, but can also relate to your statement of grant purpose. We'll talk about creating an outline. We'll talk about show, not tell. We'll go over some grammar and style conventions. And then, of course, the brainstorming activity will be at the end. And tomorrow, we'll all see you again for polishing and revising your writing. All right. So getting into outline and organization. So while you're writing, while you're working on your first draft, while you're revising, you want to make sure that you're organizing your essay into paragraphs when you introduce a new idea. This will help you keep track of how many different ideas, how many different thoughts are you kind of bringing into this essay. And it also makes it easier to go back and switch things around when you realize, actually, this idea goes better with my second paragraph, not my fourth. Um, right when you get to your document, make sure you put your font and margins as standard. Typically, that's Times New Roman. Arial font is also accepted, 12 point with 1-inch margins. Don't try and make your font really small so you can fit more in one page if one page is the limit. That is not easy to read, and recruiters or admissions readers won't want to see that. Make sure you maintain a consistent format and writing style. So don't change up if you're doing a lot of long sentences with commas. Don't suddenly change to short sentences with a lot of periods. Figure out what your style is. How does your voice sound the best? And maintain that throughout the whole piece. And then, of course, make sure to reread your essay multiple times for grammatical errors before asking someone else to review it. So you don't want to have a rough draft that's kind of all over the place and give it to someone else. It probably doesn't make sense. They probably won't understand it and won't be able to give you good feedback. But once you're into, usually I say like third, fourth, or fifth draft area is when I start asking some peers, friends, teachers to help review my writing. So, some essay development, taking your ideas to an organized outline. Some people like to do this, it helps them organize their thoughts. I definitely prefer the technique of doing a free write and then going back and organizing stuff, but you should try out different things, figure out what works for you. So we can see we have mind map on the left. So that's just drawing out a collection of concepts. Maybe you have one idea, maybe you put in the center grad school, and then you start putting the reasons or the things you want to study around it and start making the connections there. This can be really great if you're really hands-on or a visual learner that can help you organize your ideas. You can also do an informal outline. Your ideas get organized into groups with some details. So maybe you know, okay, in the introduction, I want to discuss my background. Maybe this is for my statement of grant purpose. I want to discuss my background. Why am I qualified to study this? And then in paragraph 1, I'm going to talk about my specific research experience I had when I was doing my undergraduate degree. In paragraph 2, I'm going to talk about how I worked in a different lab setting and did different research and the things I learned from that. And then
I think we I
that
think we
hear me?
lost Katie, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's back.
I'm still here. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Okay.
exactly.
Sorry, I think it's the rain and my internet connection. So of course we also have the formal outline where it's a little more detailed. You go in, I'm going to talk about this detail, second detail, third detail, and my supporting reasons. And then once you have that outline filled out, all you have to do is go back and write the sentences about each detail. So these are all 3 different styles. None is better than the other, but some might work better for you than compared to other writers. So it's all about testing things out, figuring out what works for you. And of course, these are also techniques that you can use when you're in grad school, when you're writing papers there. Okay, so here we have an example of the 5 paragraph outline. So, of course, paragraph one, any essay that you're writing is going to start with your introduction. You're going to need to have a thesis statement, and you're going to briefly summarize your 3 supporting paragraphs, so the body of your paper. Of course, in paragraph two, three, and four, that's where you're elaborating more on one piece of evidence for your essay, one detail of your life, one experience that qualifies you for this, one passion that you have that makes you you. And then, of course, paragraph five is your conclusion. You want to summarize again in a different way the 3 body paragraphs and then discuss how those 3 paragraphs support your thesis statement from paragraph one. So you want to sum everything up and tie it with a nice little bow. That's how I like to think about it. Of course, as you develop your essay, this can be a great place to start. Your essay might not end with this perfect 5 paragraph outline, and that's okay. This is a way to help organize your thoughts, organize your ideas, so that it's easier to review and revise. All right, so now Maya will go over storytelling.
Yes, so we're going to talk about how you can craft a narrative, even if it has to do with your admissions essays. So you want to make sure that you put an emphasis on storytelling and put an emphasis on the fact that reading your essay should feel like reading a story about your life, because that's exactly what it is. You're presenting who you are to the admissions council. Strong storytellers recount a story so the reader can envision the events that happened. So you need to provide a lot of context and details so that they understand what's going on. Again, this is the first time these people meet you, and you want to provide enough context for them to really, really understand. You can't just say, "Oh, the program I did my second year of university." Well, they don't know which university, they don't know which program, how long did it last, what did you study, why was it important to you, right? So you need to give them as much context as you can. Well, as much context is as necessary to completely understand what you're trying to say. Keep in mind that every language, culture, academic tradition, like we talked about yesterday, has an effective way to communicate. Like we talked about yesterday in Mexico, it is very, very formal, and using passive voice is a very normal thing. Versus in the United States, where it's a lot more concise and a lot more active in sense of active and passive voice. It's also important to really clearly communicate your story to readers. You need to understand yourself and what you want to share. It's okay in the brainstorming process and the first few drafts to just kind of free write like we've talked about before. But once you kind of start to formalize your ideas within your essay, you want to make sure that that's clear. And you also want to talk about your strengths and why they should choose you for this program. Like we talked about, market yourself. You know, you have a lot of strengths that you might not realize are very, very important to include in your essay. Here we've included a little storytelling arc. This is more for creative writing. This is more for, when you think of stories, right? It's storytelling, but it's still helpful when you're thinking about the outline of your essay. Some people are more creative, and this might be helpful for you. You start with the exposition, then the conflict is introduced. The exposition would be who you are or your name or something, your introduction to yourself. Then your rising action, the climax, the most important part, the falling action, what happens after what did you learn from this program, right? And then last but not least, the resolution. How are you going to tightly tie everything up at the end to make it nice? Okay, show, don't tell is another part of effective storytelling. So when you talk about telling, a telling story is usually a story that includes short sentences that present the story in a vague, uninteresting way. This style of writing can be very common with STEM students because of just the nature of scientific writing, right? It's very to the point. During this lab, we came up with this hypothesis, period. But you want to, at least with the personal statement, you want to try to show your story, right? You want to use vivid verbs, descriptive adjectives, creative details to present the story in a unique and engaging way. So here are a few examples. I earned the highest GPA in my class at graduation, period. Okay, great, interesting fact. But you could make it a lot more interesting. And you could make it a lot more exciting for the reader. I mean, keep in mind, they're going to be reading hundreds, if not thousands, of these essays, and you want to make it exciting, an enjoyable experience for them to get to know you. As I looked across the audience at my graduation, I felt my heart swell with pride upon seeing my parents standing and cheering for me, knowing that I exceeded their goal for me to be the first in my family to graduate from college by also achieving the highest GPA among my 300 classmates. There is a little caveat. We do want to make sure that we are still being concise. It's important to describe everything in detail, but also, again, you have a word limit. But this is just a way to start thinking about your writing as more than just, especially for the admissions essay, as more than something just academic. It's not a lab report. It is a story about you. It's a story. That's exactly what it is. So here are a few other examples. These are very simple, but Bailey was happy. That's an example two. How could you describe that Bailey was happy? A gigantic grin spread across Bailey's face. And wait, sorry, the sentence is weird. And her eyes lit up like the sky on the 4th of July. For example, here, Bella was shocked, okay? Bella couldn't help herself. Her jaw dropped to the floor as her eyebrows shot towards the ceiling. So it's describing this feeling of being shocked without even saying that Bella was shocked, if this kind of makes sense. Again, it is a little bit more creative, but it still might be useful when you're describing, a specific experience that maybe shaped who you are as a student, or a story somebody told you once. You don't want to say, oh, this person told me this, period, right? You want to make it a little bit more creative. So here are a few recommendations for writing a telling sentence. A showing sentence. You want to begin with the telling sentence. So think in simple terms, what do you want to say? And then you kind of start to think about your senses in that moment. Bring yourself back to that moment. Think about the details. What did you hear? What did you see? And how did you feel? So add all of these up, all of these feelings, these emotions, these sounds, these images that you've seen. And you want to use strong verbs and adjectives to help describe the situation to the reader. Try not to use just the word that you're trying to tell, if that makes sense. You want to show them how you felt. Show them how this experience has shaped you to be a stronger student. All right, next we're going to talk a little bit more about grammar and style conventions. So what makes an effective sentence? So clarity, we've talked about this before. A sentence should be very clear to the reader. You don't necessarily, a formal sentence isn't necessarily one that's longer. It can be a very short sentence, it can be very formal, and it can be very clear. You also want to make sure you use well-chosen vocabulary. Choose words whose meaning you are sure of and use them correctly. Don't use a big word because it may sound good, but if you use it wrong, it looks a lot worse than if you use a simple word. Using strong verbs, back to the active voice, which we've talked about yesterday. When it's possible, use verbs that show the action of the sentence. The verb be in all its forms is, was, were, is, are, was, were, etc. is a weaker choice in many cases. Try and find the verb that shows action. And you also want to make sure that your sentence is of proper length. If your sentence expresses a simple idea, it probably needs to be a short sentence. More complex ideas may need longer sentences. Vary your sentence lengths as well. You don't want to have, 5 sentences that are 3 lines long. That's too much. You can have 1 long sentence, 1 short sentence, 2 long sentences, 3 short sentences, right? So you want to make it a little bit interesting. If all your sentences are very short, your writing sounds choppy. If they're all too long, it can be overly complicated and hard to understand. Again, you have to keep the reader engaged. Oh,
Sorry, I think we got a bit out of order on our slide.
that's okay.
Is this where we should be, Maya, on gerund and infinitive?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no. Could you go back 1 slide?
I think we missed all of our comma rules. How did that
Oh, yeah,
happen?
what happened?
Hold on, I'm going to exit out real quick.
No worries.
All right.
It should be slide number 15.
15, here we go. Okay, there's just no title on this one. That's why I got confused.
Oh, perfect. All right, you also want to make sure you use a limited number of clauses and prepositions. The more clauses and prepositions you have in a sentence, the harder it can be to understand. Think about how many clauses you have included in a single sentence. Basically, this means limit your sentence to a few thoughts, not 7. It can be easy when you want to express everything all at once, but you want to make sure that there are clear sentences that are not too long. Subject-verb agreement. I left an assignment for you guys for homework about subject-verb agreement because we're not going to go over it too much during this webinar, but make sure you can identify the subject of your sentence and then make sure the verb agrees with it in number. For example, the cup is full of coffee. The cups are full of coffee. This may sound very simple, and a lot of times this is something a grammar checker can fix for you, but not always. And it's always something you have to keep in mind. It is a simple grammatical mistake, but it does happen more than you would think. You also want to use correct verb tense. If you're talking about things in the past, use past tense. It may seem obvious, but it's not obvious for everybody. And it is a difficult aspect of English. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about active and passive voice. Active voice is used for most non-scientific writing. Using active voice for the majority of your sentences makes your meaning clear for readers and keeps the sentences from becoming too complicated or wordy. For example, this is a difference between the United States and Mexico. Like I've said, in the United States, writing is mainly written in active voice. Passive voice is more common in Mexico. So here you can see an example. The entrance exam was failed by over 1/3 of the applicants to the school. This is passive voice. Over 1/3 of the applicants to the school failed the entrance exam. It's an example of active voice because the sentence subject, 1/3 of the applicants, performs the action. Something isn't happening to them. The failure isn't happening to them. They are the ones failing. All right, here are a couple examples. I'm not going to read the whole thing for the sake of time, but I'll read the first few sentences. A deep interest in environmental policy was developed during my final years of high school. Countless articles and case studies were analyzed, and a research project on sustainable agriculture was completed as part of the senior thesis. And for the active voice example, I developed a deep interest in environmental policy during my final years of high school. I analyzed countless articles and case studies and completed a research project on sustainable agriculture as part of my senior thesis. You can see here, you are the subject of all of these sentences. And this is especially important when you're writing about yourself. You want to put yourself at the center of your paper about you. It may sound redundant, but it's a really, really key aspect of writing these essays. You're talking about you, not about something that happened to somebody related to you, maybe, right? All right, we're going to talk about the gerund versus the infinitive, which for me is honestly still a little bit confusing. So we're going to go over it just in case you need a refresher. A gerund is a noun made from a verb by adding ing. Infinitives are the to form of the verb. I enjoy reading is the gerund. I want to read is the infinitive. So enjoy requires a gerund. He enjoys swimming, eating, and sleeping, the ing. But want requires an infinitive. She wants to work. She wants to swim. She wants to eat, right? Some verbs require only a gerund. Others take only an infinitive. And there are some that can use both. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Katie for the run-on sentences.
All right. So one thing I don't like to say hate a lot, but one thing I passionately hate are run-on sentences. So what is that? It's a few run-ons in few sentences are terms describing two independent clauses that are joined together with no connecting word or punctuation to separate the clauses. Basically, what does this look like? Students will send me an essay to revise, and a whole paragraph, maybe it's half a page long, is one sentence. So how can you help detect these? I have the little tip at the bottom. If your sentence is more than 2 lines on your page, it is a run-on. Or if you're reading your essay out loud and you can't finish the sentence without having to pause and take a breath, it's too long. It's a run-on. So we have these two examples. So number 1 says, they weren't dangerous criminals, they were detectives in disguise. This isn't a horribly offensive run-on, but we have 2 independent clauses. They weren't dangerous criminals, they were detectives in disguise. So you can see in the second line, we need to put that semicolon in there to separate these 2 ideas. Then example 2, we say, I didn't know which job I wanted. I was too confused to decide. Again, it's not the most offensive run-on I've ever seen, but we're separating. We've got 2 ideas. I didn't know about the job and I was too confused. So we need to add a comma and a conjunction, which in this case is and, because that's the same subject. You're adding information to prevent it from being a run-on. Another way to prevent run-ons is to put a period in there. A lot of times, if you're having multiple commas, multiple phrases, independent clauses with commas and commas and commas, you need to find somewhere in there to put a period. That's a style convention that's also seen a lot between US academic writing and writing in Spanish. I remember when I was learning Spanish, my Spanish teacher said, there's no such thing as a run-on in Spanish. I said, not for me. Not for me. There's not. Run-ons exist everywhere. But keep an eye out for those. On that same topic, let's talk about some comma rules. So you want to use a comma before a coordinating conjunction that connects two independent clauses. The coordinating conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Of course, we just saw an independent clause as a group of words that contains a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. So here we have the example. The correct one is, you can go to a movie with me, comma, or you can go shopping alone. We're connecting those two ideas with or and a comma. You also want to use commas to separate items in a series. The teacher passed out the quiz, comma, sat down on her chair, comma, and stared at the students. Additionally, you'll use a comma after an introductory element, and these can also be known as transition words, which we'll look at more soon. So words like after, although, as, while, when, until, before, blah, blah, blah. If Sarah wants to memorize the poem, that's our whole introductory element, comma, she will have to practice every day. So we're doing an if, then clause. You might have heard it shared or presented as that before. We also need to use commas to set off an appositive. An appositive is a noun or a noun phrase that renames a noun beside it. So here we have the example. My uncle's car, comma, a red Lamborghini, comma, always gets attention on the road. Another way to think of an appositive is extra details or extra information that you could take out of the sentence and it would still make sense. So if I said, my uncle's car always gets attention on the road, that's a complete thought, that's a correct sentence, but I'm adding in a red Lamborghini, which is the appositive, that's the extra details, so I put that phrase in between two commas. Additionally, you'll use a comma to separate coordinating adjectives, which are words that apply to and describe some attribute of the same noun or subject. So the man lived a long, happy life. Long and happy are both describing life. So that's when you would use the comma to separate those coordinating adjectives. All right. So it looks like we are right on time, and I'm going to pass it over to Maya for this brainstorming activity.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. So now you guys are going to get a chance. If you have a piece of paper near you, a pen, a pencil, or just on your phone or your laptop, we're going to get started on this brainstorming activity. This will give you a chance to just kind of start generating ideas if you haven't already. If you already have, that's okay. Just answer the questions regardless. It might help you to brainstorm some new ideas. So answer all of these sentences. You can make lists, bullet points, word clouds, mind maps. They don't have to be complete sentences, but you do want to answer them to, as best as you can. In 5 years, I want to. In 3 years, I want to. In 5 years, I want to. In grad school, I want to. I want to go to grad school because I want to make an impact on the world by. I want to research how or find the solution for. And a major problem I would like to solve is. So if you can grab a piece of paper or open your notes app on your phone, we're going to give you around 10 minutes to get this done. Sounds good? One question. Alejandro, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I actually have two questions. I know them. The first one is about the part of the storytelling. You were telling us about the show versus the telling a story.
Yep.
So I have a question because in the last class we have today, we were discussing about that English speakers prefer a shorter sentence or sentence to the point. So showing achievements, for example, can be more verbose. Is this a contradiction to the belief of English native speakers preferring this kind of writing being to the point or not? So basically the question is how do I know when I want to write more romantically or when I want to write more concisely and more direct to an English native speaker? That's the
Sure.
first question.
Yeah, well, yes, it is a contradiction in a way, but they also can, work with each other. So there's a difference between, I would say, showing. You can still show through 2 or 3 different sentences versus, sorry, there's a lot of noise in the background, through 2 or 3 different sentences, but you can also, you can have a tell sentence that's 5 lines long and you're just telling, I did this and I did this and I did this, I did this. I would recommend for you, if you're talking about something very personal, something that had a big impact on you emotionally, that's something that I would use more show language. But using show language, yes, it includes more words, but it isn't necessarily more wordy, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. I will take that into consideration. The other question is about the comma section. I don't think I remember if you mentioned the Oxford comma, the comma that is placed after the last "and" in a list. Should we use that comma? Often I use it because I like it, but I don't know if in my essays, for example, will be, I mean, a good practice to use it or not.
Well,
Yeah, that's a great question. The Oxford comma, some people use it, some people don't in English. I'm a big supporter of it. I think everyone should use the Oxford comma. But just like you said, you like it, other people don't like it. You can use it or you cannot use it. There's not really an exact agreement on it. And if you don't use Oxford commas, it's not the end of the world.
yeah, I agree. As an English major, I love the Oxford comma. I think it's amazing and I think everybody should use it, but it's personal choice.
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you
so
very
it
much.
looks like we are at 6:40 right now. So 10 minutes will take us to 6:50. And then, so you'll have time to answer all of these brainstorming prompts. And then we'll have some time to share some ideas that you had. And if you have any questions that come up, we'll have some time for that at the end.
All right, guys, I hope you all had a chance to think, brainstorm a little bit and write down your ideas. I'm gonna call out I'm gonna call us out, put you guys out on the spotlight. I'm gonna ask Andrea Camarena to share what you want to do in 3 years.
I wrote that I would like to develop projects in the technical fields, also to do some research and get exposed to innovative discoveries in the technical field, but also mix that with quantitative finance. And also would like to connect with people who are having interests similar to mine, and do some research in technical skills.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Let's ask Christian Salazar. In 5 years, what do you want to do?
In 5 years, I want to be traveling the world consistently, sharing my research.
That's great. Thank you. What about Denise Prado? In grad school, what's your goal? What do you want to do in grad school? Denise? Okay, no worries. We'll ask somebody else. Frida, what are your plans for grad school? No? Anybody want to share? What are their plans for graduate school? Okay, yes?
Yes. Me? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Well, in grad school, well, I would like to develop my knowledge and my skills about banking and financial law. And I would like to engage with experts in this field and also with students in order to gain a better understanding of how institutions and financial institutions and the law can help to improve the quality of the services provided to the users in order to protect their uh, their assets. Mhm.
That's great. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for sharing. If anybody else wants to volunteer, I can also take volunteers. Okay, Marlon?
As a volunteer.
Hello.
Perfect.
So the next question or the same?
Yeah, the next one.
Then
Why do
okay.
you want to go to grad school?
Okay. I want to go to in grad school. I want to develop advanced research skills in quantitative and qualitative methods. And I want to go there because I need a rigorous training to answer complex questions, because I've encountered some questions as a consultant, teacher, and researcher.
Great. Thank you so much. Nike, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How do you want to make an impact on the world?
You pronounced it perfectly. I'm so sorry I cannot turn on my camera.
No
But I want
worries.
to make an impact on the world by promoting youth and women leadership at the local level in peace building initiatives.
That's great. That's fascinating. Thank you. Tabata?
I want to make an impact on the world by studying why territories are deeply gendered and how can we contest this power relation through technology.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Camila, what do you want to research or what do you want to find the solution for?
I want to research in ways of preventing cancer using technology, machine learning. That's it. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's huge. That's it. That's okay, last question. Anybody want to volunteer? A major problem you'd like to solve? If not, I'll call on somebody. Okay, Juan Daniel. Perfecto.
Well, a major problem I would like to solve is fresh water. I think one of the biggest issues that we in the future we need to solve is the freshwater supply. I got a master's degree in hydrology, but I want to learn about more about the techniques in the United States that is used for the rivers and the and this and they get the salt water to convert to the fresh water and actually know more about the pollution that can help us here in Mexico to solve the solution of the fresh water. I know that one of the most important things in the United States is Valle del Napa that uses residual water in water waste plants that converts this residual water to to convert for use in agriculture and functional tap water.
That's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Just for the sake of time, everybody else who has their hands up and they would like to share, feel free to put it in the comments, but I do want to leave a few minutes just for questions at the end and to conclude everything, if that works for you guys. Thank you so much for all the volunteers and for sharing. I really appreciate it. Just some more important information to wrap everything up. An average graduate application essay goes through approximately 30 drafts. So there's no problem if you end up scrapping everything you wrote and then starting over or changing every single sentence. It's totally okay. It's very normal and it's expected. Like I said, you're most likely to delete everything you wrote in the first 15 drafts because writing is the physical process of thinking and writing is rewriting. Okay, you want it to be as good as you can get it, right? Focus on your ideas, write it in your language or write in Spanglish. You can do this if you need to. Honestly, when I'm writing, I choose to either write in English or in Spanish because otherwise my brain just gets all mixed up. But everybody thinks differently. Don't worry about grammar until the very end. The last few drafts, you want to just get all of your ideas out there. You want to have a clear outline of what you're going to write and think about the grammar kind of second, not second once you get to the end, but in the early drafts, right? It should take no less than 2 months on working on it at least 3 times a week. So really take your time on these essays, guys. And universities may or may not restrict your word count. Check every single requirement for every single university. It's very different. It will continually expand and contract between 2,000 and 500 words over time. So the process can be difficult if you want. It can make it a lot more difficult if you think that your first draft needs to be the perfect final draft. It will never be this way. So you keep rewriting, keep editing, keep asking people to look over your paper, keep thinking about it in your free time. If you have a chance, you might be walking down the street and you'll have some amazing idea. Like I like to record voice notes in my phone if I'm thinking, because I like to hear myself talk, but also just to hear, my thought process out loud. Exactly, and embrace the process. Don't worry about the fact that it won't be ready during your first draft. That's very normal. Last but not least, I'm going to leave the same homework QR. It's not the same document, but I have some more links that also related to yesterday's boot camp. There are a couple little homework assignments in there as well. If you want to take a picture of this, scan the QR code and you can check that out. And we only have a few minutes left, but I want to open it up for a few questions. Juan Daniel, you have a question? Okay, I'm going to answer the one in the chat. Is it possible to consult the...
No, that was my participation.
Oh, sorry. Perfect.
I was a volunteer, so I forgot to lower the hand.
Oh, no worries. Here in the chat, is it possible to consult the recordings of the sessions? Yes, I'm uploading the other 2 sessions to the YouTube as we speak. We will share those links with you. They'll be available. And yeah, you can go back and watch them if you'd like. Areli, you have your hand up?
Yeah, that was my question, actually. I was gonna ask the same thing, if recordings were gonna be available so we can watch them.
They will be. Yep, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. The YouTube channel is Education USA Mexico. Marco Gutierrez, you have a question?
Hi, yeah. Which other considerations we have to have, or another will be like,
Hello.
what are the things that matter the most in writing this essay? Because, in example, we know leadership is important, but also school is important, work is important. At which one of those we have to be give it the most is matter?
Yeah. So this is a great question, and I think you should keep in mind, I know you should keep in mind, they will also have your CV right in front of them. They'll have your entire application. So when you're writing your essay, it's important to remember that you're not just listing off things that you've done. It's authentic. It talks about you as a person, your identity, how you can relate this to your academic goals. So they want to see you as a complete person and make sure you're giving them that, or you're talking about something that you're passionate about. If you're super passionate about what you do in school, great. Talk about it in a way that's unique and that doesn't just repeat exactly what you've written in your CV, if that helps. Monica, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks. Actually, can you hear me well?
Yes, yeah.
All right. My question is about the thesis statement, one that you mentioned at the beginning.
The thesis statement, yeah.
Yeah. Like I want to know how it is supposed to be, what it's supposed to contain. That's what is kind of confusing for me.
Sure. Yeah. So it depends on every single type of essay. It depends on if you're writing the personal essay, or you're writing an essay about your study objectives or whatever. But it's basically the sentence that kind of is the culmination of your entire essay. Let me explain
Okay.
further. So it doesn't have to be a super long sentence where you say, it's basically
It's kind of
what your essay is about, so that they know
Okay.
what you're writing about, so that it's clear you're writing about, for example, let's say I'm applying to a PhD in art history. And it's my personal essay, and I want to say, okay, because of this experience I had in an art class when I was younger, this is why I'm interested in XYZ, if that kind of makes sense. But it changes. There are multiple formulas, but it depends on every single essay. Yeah, Mariana shared a thesis statement from OWL at Purdue, which is a great resource. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what a thesis statement should contain, because it's different depending on every single essay. But if you want to take,
that's fine. Okay. Okay. So that could be like the abstract of this CV.
Yes, kind of, yeah.
Like something similar to.
Yeah. It's a way
Okay.
it's a way you can be. The thesis statement is the way you can kind of consolidate what you want to talk about into one sentence.
I'd just like to add as well, usually you're not going to start writing your essay with your thesis statement. You kind of have to flesh out your ideas, write your topic, your body paragraphs. You might have an idea of what your thesis statement would be about, but usually you won't have your final thesis statement until you've gone through a few different drafts of your essay. But great question, Monica.
All right. Great, thanks.
Marco, is this hand raised from before, or do you have another question?
From before, I didn't notice it was up, but yeah, I had another question, but I can remember. No, yeah, that's enough.
No worries. Well, I think that'll conclude it for day 2. Of course, we'll see you all tomorrow for day 3. So Marco, if you remember your question, or if anyone else has any questions come up, save them for tomorrow. We'll go over reviewing and revising your essay. You've all officially started the brainstorming process if you haven't already started that before. So congratulations. Keep working on it. Spend some time every day brainstorming, writing, working on your essay. That's how you're going to make good progress. And then without further ado, have a great evening. See you tomorrow.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for